get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear overnight, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your very down-to-earth host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. And very special thanks again, we don't thank them enough, to Bowen Band for the theme song, which somebody rightly put is the everyone's favorite dirty little genius without saying it song. All right. That's, you know, it used to take talent, guys, to be like, you know, to throw innuendos out there. Now we're just a raunchy society and we just flatly say it. There's no fun in that. There's no fun in that. All right, so it's back to business as usual under Joe Biden, clearly. And this $2 trillion bill, fakely named the COVID relief bill, is packed with a whole bunch of goodies to pay back everybody who helped to elect Joseph R. Biden, the president, the 46th president of the United States. Or select. Somebody said select, and Laura loved that. All right. But we talked about schools the other day and the funding for schools. Today, we're going to branch off that a little bit. All right. But the bottom line is, I tweeted something the other day and some people didn't really understand. So let's break this down. What it does, and it is Freewheeling Friday. We're going to have a Q&A and more. And we're going to look at why. Maybe this is why Congress's approval ratings are always in the junker. But they're corrupt. And everybody knows kind of that they're corrupt. Yet every time elections come around, we start to like pretend like these are moral people or something. They're not. These are not moral people. And one of the most immoral provisions I've ever seen in any bill is in this bill. In the House version of this bill, which Democrats will get their way. Okay? Because they're going first. All right? So here we go. If you are a parent with school-age children and you are not a federal worker, you will get a one-time stimulus payment for the most part. Right? Most likely. The amount that you will get, or most people get, $1,400. Okay? It depends if you have, you know, what your situation is. They do get more. But the average American is going to get $1,400. If you are a federal employee with children, what they essentially did was say that you are now in the category of caring for a person at home. All right? Because you have children who are distance learning. Like you have to care for a loved one who's sick. Like you have to care for your parents on hospice or something. Okay? They put them into that category, and it makes you eligible for paid leave. And with that, you can get, for weeks and weeks and weeks, 14 or 15 weeks, I have to go and double check, but upwards of $21,000 in paid leave payments. You will get as much as most Americans will get one time every single week. Every single week. So why do I say it's immoral? This is a bribe to shut up already Biden-friendly federal workers. Most of them are Democrats. Let's get real. This is a $1,400 weekly payment to screw over your own children. To shut up and just take it and say, you know what? I'm fine with my kids being home distance learning. Even though all the evidence shows this is bad. This is a bad idea. This will be catastrophic to our children. Catastrophic. And even if you think your kid is doing well, they're not. Because most of the studies, and we went over a couple of them the other day, you lost about a third of this year if you're a distance learning child. You only learned, if you're lucky, about 2/3 of what you would learn every single year. I think that's generous, frankly, because I have 2 children in distance learning. It's a freaking joke. Now they're going back. Thank God we made our own situation here, and we pressured them to go back to in-person learning. All right, but a lot of people have not, and this is immoral because remember the election season. These people are like, they defer to authority. These are those kinds of profiles of people. They defer to authority. They want to believe everything their elected Congress people tell them. They want to. If Dr. Fauci tells them something, they want to believe that. That guy needs to resign, by the way. That guy needs to go. He's been in government too long, let alone in this situation. All right. But maybe this is why Congress is the way they are. Can we show the screen share? This is from Rasmussen. It was embargoed, but they said I could. They may have put it up by now, actually. I don't know. I know it's very difficult to see, so I will read it for you. Okay. Kevin McCarthy, of all people, is the most popular congressional leader in U.S. Congress right now, which is incredible. But the bar is very low. It's not like he's popular. He's just less unpopular than the rest of them. Very much Trumpian kind of favorability numbers, which is weird, I know. But it's a little bit reversed because most of Trump's supporters have a very favorable opinion. Somewhat is a smaller chunk, all right? So, but the vast majority do you have a very or somewhat favorable opinion of Donald Trump? It would always be packed in the very favorable. And then maybe, middle single digits, 15, something like that. Say somewhat, all right? But 20% of likely voters asked by Rasmussen have a very favorable opinion of Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader from California, the Republican from California. 23% have a somewhat favorable opinion. Now, I'd say there is a downside to this. If you're any pollster and you're looking at these numbers, there's a big downside. That somewhat number is soft. It is on both sides of the equation, whether you're somewhat favorable or somewhat unfavorable. The same thing goes with approval. When you're somewhat, you're timid, and it's somewhat movable. All right. So if he has a bad day, that number could change real quick. All right. Somewhat unfavorable is 13%. That's not bad news for him. And very unfavorable is 22%, while another 23% say they have no idea who he is. Okay? Which is freaking sad. What does that tell you about the state of our electoral politics? Right? The information that these people have. How do you not know who the House Minority Leader is in the U.S. Congress? Even if you're not a political junkie, then don't you dare complain about what Congress is doing and how bad your life is. If you don't know who the House Minority Leader is, you really have no room to complain about anything. Anyway, impression of Mitch McConnell. You ready? Very favorable, 8%. Including only 11% who have a very favorable opinion of him. Folks, as I will tell you in a second, that is not much different than Nancy Pelosi, considering the sampling error in this survey. Okay? I am not kidding. When it comes to views among Republicans, very favorable. this guy, Mitch McConnell, all right? The turd, the idiot, all the other names we've allocated to the dumbest majority leader in the history of the country, probably. This guy is not much different than Nancy Pelosi, all right? And then somewhat favorable overall, 21%. So Mitch McConnell, you can boast a beautiful 29% approval rating. And again, about 25% of Republicans have a somewhat favorable opinion. Nancy Pelosi, very favorable, 19%. A little over double what Mitch McConnell has. Among Republicans, 7% have a very favorable opinion of Nancy Pelosi. About 4% less than Mitch McConnell. That's it. That's how badly this guy has outstayed his welcome. He just got reelected, kissing Trump's butt. And he's stuck there. Nobody likes him. Nobody but K Street likes Mitch McConnell. But this is particularly bad.
China likes him too.
That's true. China likes Mitch. That's true. Pound. All right. Somewhat favorable, 18% for Nancy Pelosi. So overall, Nancy Pelosi's favorability ratings are 37%. All right. Impression of Chuck Schumer, even worse than Nancy Pelosi. That has always been the case for as long as we've actually seen this. I know it's crazy. Nancy Pelosi is not as unpopular as she once was, and I mean that because we've had her in the 20s before. But she has since been more popular than Chuck Schumer in the era of Donald Trump. Now, again, the bar is very low between a very favorable and somewhat favorable opinion. We're talking about 33%. Or 33%. 16% very favorable, 17% somewhat favorable. So he's not exactly a very popular guy. AOC. And I'm so glad they threw this in here because what it does show, and because it's going to roll right into the next thing I want to talk about. 16% have a very favorable opinion of AOC. 16%. Still better than Mitch McConnell. Double the number for Mitch McConnell, but abysmal. I mean, what does that tell you? Mitch, twice as many people have a favorable opinion of AOC than you. How effective could you possibly be as the mouthpiece for the Republican Party in the Senate if you are not even remotely as popular as one of the least liked people in American politics? I mean, this is a joke, Laura. This is a joke. Dude, this is how you know Mitch McConnell doesn't give a damn about his own country. He doesn't care about his country. He doesn't really care about republicanism. He doesn't care about his ideology. He's a corrupt crook who cares nothing for nothing other than stuffing his pockets and his wife's pockets and his wife's friends' pockets in China with loads and loads of money. That's all they care about. Because how could you possibly look at this and say, I've been effective, I've made a difference? And don't give me the judges crap, guys. He went off a list of the Federalist Society judges. They failed you all if you're Trump supporters and you're conservatives or you're Republican, whatever category you put yourself in on the right, obviously you're a Mitch defender. You have to be on the right if you're any kind of Mitch defender. Look at the numbers. Nobody likes Mitch anywhere else in the country. All right. I mean, really. Don't give me that. Where did they help you? Where did any of these judges help you? Nowhere. Point me to a case. You're telling me we're supposed to give them credit for getting 2 Supreme Court justices on the bench before ACB? And that's if you even want to give them credit for those. I mean, presidents, as long as their nominee is qualified, are entitled to their Supreme Court nominee. Unless they're disqualified by some radical view, and I mean real radical, not the fake MSNBC kind of radical, or that they have disqualified themselves professionally because they're a bad jurist. I'm not giving Mitch McConnell credit for that. He doesn't deserve credit for it. He was the majority leader. Oh my God, he got a nominee through the Senate. Wow.
Well, somebody did mention that he did excel in selling out his own country.
I mean, really, he also, I got to tell you, joking with Paul Ryan at the Mayflower that day, laughing at the Mayflower. You remember this. This is when Donald Trump was first inaugurated. Joking and mocking Donald Trump and the idea that they're going to do anything on immigration. By the way, this was a few hours after Paul Ryan turned to a couple cameras and microphones and said, like I said after the election, he heard voices we didn't hear, and we're going to make sure we serve those voices. Then he walked across the street,
and sold them.
powwowed with Mitch McConnell, and laughed their butts off about what a joke the country is, and what a joke it is that they would even entertain doing anything that's seriously in your favor. All right, so let's AOC all together before we go back. You can if you want. AOC all together is like 34%. 34%, I believe, or 36%, very favorable. Well, look, let me look. Very favorable, 16%, 18%, somewhat favorable. So in the end, it's a total joke. It's a total joke. A total joke.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're messing. Yeah, so there you have it, Mitch. All right, which gets me into this next fight. I told you the other day, this is going to be, they can go back to business as usual, and they can pay off everybody that helped them during this election. The neocons, by the way, are getting paid off because as we speak, the missiles are flying in Syria right now. All right, they're hitting Iran-backed Shia militia. Okay, whatever. This has been the excuse forever. They want these people, the military-industrial complex, and the neocons, which are part of it, all right, the Wolfowitz era, they want Iran gone. They have wanted Iraq and Iran gone for a long time. They got their Iraq. And they're only going at the Shias because they do help Assad. This is about getting rid of Bashar al-Assad. That's what this is about. Don't give me this crap. They're hitting Iran shit. Don't you find it funny that Iran... Guys, Joe Biden was going to give Iran everything it wanted. Why on earth would they tell the Shia militia to bomb targets, U.S. targets in Iraq right now? It doesn't make any sense. How many times do you have to be fooled and lied to? How many times? It makes no sense. And why would Assad house them? He knows Trump is gone, and he would be asking for it. Which is why he didn't do the other stuff, half the other stuff we blamed him for in the past, which we now know. But I told you that this coalition that elected or selected Joe Biden was never going to be able to hold itself together. These are the internal contradictions, all right, from that really leftism in general, but these are the internal contradictions that these, Marxist heirs to the school of, the heirs to the school of Marxism worried about so much. You cannot please everyone. You can't. And for a little while, they may get away with the warmongering aspect, turning into more of whatever they want to, whatever, like Glenn Greenwald's and the Mike Tracy's will call it, like the neoliberal, which is really a neocon only. The truth is they were never conservatives. They were always liberals. They may get away with that, but domestically, there's going to be some policy problems. And we're seeing that already with this coronavirus relief bill. This kickback in disguise as coronavirus relief bill. House progressives are trying to derail this bill. They don't want to derail it. They want to get it through, but it's maybe if you're a Republican, you don't want to see this bill pass. It's a secret hope to derail it, but they want to get through a minimum wage hike. It was the last minute, and basically they were told no, and it was announced it's not going to be included in this bill. So now the progressives are flipping out. If the minimum wage hike gets into the bill, I don't think it'll pass the Senate. I don't know that for sure, but it's already, they got the votes in the House. It's going to be a party line vote. But a minimum wage hike could kill some of the softer support in the Senate, and that could threaten to derail the bill, which is why Democrats took it out. All right, so that's there's nothing we can do about that right now. So all right, but that's why Democrats are fighting the progressive wing. And again, this was always going to happen. This was definitely always going to happen. You can't have all of these people together with different interests. You cannot keep them pleased all of the time. It simply doesn't work. All right? And we are using a lot of width, so I will get rid of that and see if that helps. Okay, we'll see.
A lot of people want to know about Jerry Moran.
Oh, well, I just killed. Just killed that. Let us see.
Well, they're still
Let that
asking why
calm
Trump
down.
support.
This is what Robert and I saw on my Twitter feed afterward. Robert and I spent a good deal of time on Monday talking about how this Lazarus story that the media and others are putting together for Trump, they are making it possible for him to pull a Grover Cleveland because they just can't let him go. All right. It doesn't really matter if Donald Trump makes the same decisions that were wrong that he made in the past. And I got a bunch of people who are like, this was supposed to be about Trump versus CPAC. All you talked about was bad mistakes Trump made during his... You have to learn from your mistakes if you want to get better. And, the bottom line is Donald Trump has a habit of picking the wrong horse. And this is going to be an issue. It's also why Robert and I are kind of holding on to our preserving our ammunition right now, because he sucks all the oxygen out of the room, makes the wrong decision, and pretty much kills any and all hope in that particular, whatever it may be, race, job you're trying to get filled with the right person. I mean, this is repeated, right? And that's why. And by the way, maybe that it got a little bit better for them now, because I could see the usage went down quite a bit. Okay. All right. So I tried adding too much. All right. But yeah, this is what Trump does. And he's got to get better. He's got to get better. And that will hinge on whether or not he has the right people around him, because he doesn't have time to go through all of this stuff, guys. Is this guy good? Is this girl good? Who should he back in Ohio? He doesn't have the right... He does not have the time to do that. So he, of course, relies on the right people around him. And as we'll just have to see. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, because we did talk about this on Monday to some extent. But... that's what I wanted to talk about, too, was Sunday, which won't matter. It will. He's going to tee it up, and he's very much billing it now as his I am the 2024 presumptive nominee. But this is what my point is, that that'll get the base hyped for a little bit. Strategy ultimately matters, and it won't be effective if he doesn't learn from his prior mistakes. Okay, but in any event, we can save the Q&A for the
all right,
the end.
that's fine.
All right. So in any event, that's what it is. All right. What else? It's like 5 minutes before break. I don't want to get into another segment, or 5 minutes before a segment over. But consumer sentiment sucked. This is what I mean. Back to business as usual. It took all of a couple of months for Joe Biden to plunge us right back into the Obama era malaise, to steal a phrase from the Carter years. Right back to consumer sentiment in the 70s. We're all supposed to jump up and down because the consumer confidence index ticks up like a point, and it's nowhere near the levels. You know what bothers me about this? And it did because this is what I kind of feared would happen. 8 years under Barack Obama, and if you didn't work in the Obama economy, then you really, bear with me, you won't know what I'm talking about. But people who worked before Barack Obama, can we kill that, please? People who worked before Barack Obama and after Barack and through Barack Obama knew that wasn't, it didn't have to be the new norm. One thing Donald Trump did do for the country, whether you're on the right or on the left, whatever it may be, he made us believe that we could do better again. Donald Trump was the best cheerleader. That's what he did best. Cheerlead for the country. And we started seeing all these numbers that we didn't think we could see. Retail sales, folks, at brick and mortar stores. The department store was supposed to be a thing of the past. Retail sales were horrible all the time. Consumer spending was weak all the time. And we were just supposed to think that was the new normal and just move on. Manufacturing stinks. Any goods producing job was not being created. Mining and manufacturing, natural resources, all in the gutter. And that was just supposed to be that we were supposed to shrug that off as the new normal and just move forward. Well, it's a service sector economy now. That's the new normal. Let's move forward. And that was never true. That never had to be true. And that is the one thing I got to say. That was probably Trump's biggest gift to this country, was to show you that that doesn't have to be. You don't have to settle for mediocrity as a country, economically, especially. Prosperity is possible. That is not a thing of the 21st century. We all don't have to suffer in this or collectively suffer this state of mediocrity, because other countries need a piece of the pie too. We were not taking from others the last 4 years when we were experiencing strong economic growth. We weren't stealing that from, whatever, some other country. Name your pick. That's not how it works. You don't take more slices of the pie gets bigger. That's something that people on the left don't understand. They're economically illiterate. You're not actually taking another slice out of somebody else's mouth. The pie is getting bigger, and there are more slices to go around. And Donald Trump's best, I'm telling you, that his biggest gift to us was to remind us that it didn't have to be this way. And now here we are again. Right back in it. It's like a cycle. It's like a vicious cycle of domestic abuse.
It is.
I swear to God, we act collectively like with battered women. Yeah.
Or battered, just men or women.
Like it's our fault.
Abuse.
Yes. So somebody like a Donald Trump comes along, and we've seen this before. Honestly, we have seen this before. We have done this on both sides. Is it typical? One side is, better economically than the other. Yeah, but Bill Clinton's years were strong years too, and he deserves credit for at least not killing it. So for all the people who always say, well, that was really Reagan's economy continuing through the Bush years. He had a slight recession, George Herbert Walker Bush. That's what cost him the re-election. But if Herbert Walker Bush remained president during the Bill Clinton years, we still would have seen the strong growth. Yeah, probably. But we can give Bill Clinton credit for not doing what Joe Biden is doing, which is sabotage it, which is course correct. Bill Clinton did not course correct. He did, he increased some regulations. Nothing like this, folks. Nothing like this. The 1990s, when we look back, was widely a period of deregulation, which is why a lot of people going into the next century believed more regulation would actually be better, because we had the tech boom, then the crash, and people blamed lack of regulation for that. By the way, book pick, Richard, what's his name? Speaking of that, Demon of Our Own Design. Demon of Our Own Design. It's right over there. I just can't see it. Richard Bookstaber. Wow, this guy has worked with everybody on Wall Street. You want to talk about battered women syndrome? All right, we just keep doing this to ourselves over and over and over again. And you know why? Because during these periods of renewed prosperity and optimism, there are these voices that come out of nowhere that make you feel guilty. They make you feel guilty for it. You know what? It's not fair to these people. It's not fair to that person. You shouldn't be doing that well. We, as Americans, shouldn't be doing that well. And they start to just drive all these wedge issues between us. And they fracture us all up. Because prosperity does create a sense of calm and economic prosperity is good and civil disobedience is down. I mean, it's a relationship, folks. It's a relationship. So they come in and they start driving all these wedges. They create all these little crises. It's a demon of our own design. We do it, whether it's an economic crisis or a social, political crisis. We do it to ourselves every freaking time. Every time. All right. And with that, I did want to say, I had to kill that Google Chrome, but I wanted to talk more about that bill, because I really do believe this is like, put a pin in your calendars. This is the beginning already. And I think that we probably have identified several fractures already in the Democratic coalition, but this is really a big deal to these people. That minimum wage hike is a big deal. And I would say the more DC Democrats completely understand that this was a campaign promise. Mm-hmm. They completely understand it. And the Biden White House right now is being bombarded by Democrats saying, this Joe, you promised a minimum wage hike. But the White House won't sign it even if it gets through, apparently. He will not support it in this bill. Now, he may support it later, but he's not going to support it in this bill, which is a problem for them. And they're mad. Minimum wage hikes are one of these, what's that, like litmus test for the left. It's like a litmus test for the left, even though the so-called party of academics, this is one of this very now growing number of issues where academics does not support it. We have decades of labor market data on minimum wage hikes. It's very clear. You raise the minimum wage, you kill jobs. Now, can there be a minimum wage? Of course. But the numbers they're talking about, they kill jobs. We saw it out on the West Coast. We've seen it in other countries. You could go just to People's Pundit Daily right now, type in minimum wage, and you will get probably 10 or 15, maybe more articles from Dan Mitchell over the years, citing not exactly left-wing not exactly right-wing think tanks. He works for Cato. These are left-wing bureaucracies he gets most of the data from. The World Bank, the OECD, which is in Paris. What does that tell you? And it's not just American data. It's all over the world. You hike these wages, the minimum wage, and you will kill jobs. You'll cause Walmart to get more self-checkout. You'll cause McDonald's to get more kiosks. I mean, this is what minimum wage hikes do. This is what they do. Now, maybe that's fine, and that's, progress. But tell that to people who are trying to put themselves through college and have a job at McDonald's or whatever it may be. I mean, McDonald's is not a career choice. If you can't support your family on what you make from McDonald's, then you should have made better choices in your life. Can we just get real for a second? Nobody expects McDonald's to be a career choice unless you're management or something. Then whatever.
Work your way up. Then.
Work your way up. So, do you want fries with that? Is not supposed to take care of your family. When the hell did we get this idea? So because you made the wrong choices in your life, somebody else has to lose their job. And if that hurts your feelings,
their job in the process,
then you're going to kill your own jobs, you idiots. You're going to kill your own jobs. Oh my God. Do you remember that conversation we had with the I don't want to say anybody's whatever.
But I'm
Let's
saying,
just
I had
an
this
employee
conversation before the minimum wage went up.
The employee
and this woman fought me tooth and nail.
There
and
was
then
a specific.
only found herself unemployed.
Listen, can I tell it? Can I? Listen, I don't want to say, there was a minimum wage hike being implemented or being debated. First, it was being debated. And Laura got into it with this woman who worked at a certain McDonald's. I'll just say her gender, but I'm not going to get in anymore. And she's going, and Laura's trying to explain to her, you support this minimum wage? You believe that you should get X amount of dollars an hour for this job. You believe that. Well, then you're going to put your own job at risk. And it was a debate. Anyway, time goes by. The minimum wage hike goes in. and we see this person again, and she's going. She's on her way out. They moved into kiosks. And this was like maybe what, a year later, maybe 10 months later. I mean, it takes time, but
a full year, but
yeah, something like that. And I mean, really, you can't feel sorry for her. You cannot feel sorry for her. Did you really think that you were going to get that much money to sling a burger at McDonald's? It's incredible. I know people who put in fences and they're laborers, fencing laborers, and they don't make as much as these people were requesting. This is crazy. This is nuts. Anyway, yeah, the data is very clear on it. One of the many and growing number of issues that Democrats, the party of academia, does not listen to the actual data on. They don't actually listen to the data. Right? I was hoping to follow up in our segment from the other day. I was hoping Alex would be done in time, but he wasn't. There are a few things. Everybody keeps asking me whether or not I'm going, whether I'm gonna be there. I have press credentials. I don't want to go to CPAC. Even with Trump's speech, I could probably get the general idea from people that are there and are doing it. I do this every year. Last minute I go, but I wanted Alex Berenson's speech about press freedoms before this came on today because of the segment we did the other day, but we're not going to have time for it. Or we didn't have time. He was talking, I believe, right before the show was going to go on, so that wasn't going to happen. All right, there's let's see if I can do this again because there was something else I wanted to show. We're talking about back to business as usual today, and that's what this is. Business as usual in Washington, D.C., with Joe Biden back at the helm. And don't let this go, because this is what really, in truth, nobody cared about Donald Trump's character. Nobody cared Donald Trump liked pretty women. Nobody cared that Donald Trump liked talking raunchy about pretty women. They don't care about that and never did. They wanted business back as usual. Paul Ryan gets a job. Paul Ryan gets a job with Mitt Romney's son at a vulture capital firm, even though he's on the board, right? He's on the board. The press release came out the other day. Of course I'm going to talk about it. That's the theme of the show. This is what Paul Ryan really had a problem with Donald Trump. Okay, this is why he really did. Nothing to do with ideology. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump not being conservative enough for Paul Ryan, which was a joke because Paul Ryan was never really that conservative. Paul Ryan's only conservative when it comes to taking your mom and dad's Social Security away. Paul Ryan's only conservative when it comes to cutting grandma and grandpa's Medicare. It's only conservative when it comes to cutting working poor's Medicaid. That's the only time Paul Ryan's conservative. He'll spend his butt off like a drunken sailor, okay? He hasn't protected the rights of the unborn. I mean, so what else makes someone conservative in DC's eyes? He has supported every single conflict since he's been in Congress. What exactly about Paul Ryan was ever conservative? Anyway, under Trump, this was banned for former White House officials to do. So think about how much, if you're trying to get a job with the Trump administration and you're one of these like musical chair Republican people who just move in and out of administrations every 4 to 8 years, how much you hate Donald Trump when after you leave that position, you're no longer allowed. If you leave, you have a problem with the president, and you leave or you can't make it through your tenure, you leave and you go and get a job on K Street. But under Donald Trump, you can't do that. That's not allowed. There's a ban on it. All right. This guy meaning Paul Ryan, has no experience at all to speak of. He has never done anything on his own in his life. Nothing. He has no experience running a company. He has no experience as a chairman on a board. Like, only after he leaves the post of House Speaker do all of these opportunities open up. This is the worst of us. This is the worst of our system. This is what rent seeking is, okay? And why it's important. The currency in DC is quid pro quo. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. That is the currency, and your ability to basically gain currency relies on seniority, because you direct or have friends and influence to direct certain favored legislation through. You will decide whether or not a bill gets tabled or a bill gets considered. This is how it works. When you are the former speaker, you have friends everywhere. You really rack up the IOUs. Mm-hmm. You rack up the IOUs to the rat for enough to last you the rest of your miserable, corrupt life. And that's what Paul Ryan is doing.
And he had such potential to change everything.
With Mitt Romney's son.
Mm-hmm.
Tag, right? It's Tag. Was it Tag? I think it's Tag.
Yes.
I think it's Tag.
Tag, you're
Tag.
Sorry.
Tag, you're it.
If you come from
Tag, you're it. You rent seek next.
Yep.
I mean, this is the worst of us, because this is when we have talked about rent-seeking behavior, the 16th and 17th Amendments, and why they've been so damaging. Really, the 16th gave more power to be able to steer and regulate the economy, and the 17th basically allowed them to be more permanent installations in the town, so it allows these lawmakers to build up these IOUs. And in the House, average tenure just kind of followed. Once the Senate became more of a career position instead of a part-time or temporary service, public service, it became more of a career. Then the House followed suit. And that's what we get. That's what we have. We have people like Paul Ryan going around, and he's going to rake in tons of money. Mm-hmm. He's going to make tons of money. He already is making tons of money. But I mean, Paul Ryan is going to be rich beyond his wildest dreams by being a corrupt piece of crap. This is how it works. Go ahead. Tune in while I try to pull this back up.
These very same men and women are supposed to only take, the way it started was just enough pay to get to where you were going, how much money you spent, and that was your
And
pay.
John Adams was viewed to be not a monarchist, but when he was debating this, and he was like, I need money to travel. Mm-hmm. I need money to stay where I'm staying sometimes, and I need a minor kind of compensation for when if I'm here or a lawmaker is here, then if I'm a lawyer, I certainly can't practice. So I need some kind of compensation. It was like nothing, and it was temporary. And he was viewed to be on the, he would take criticism. Aren't you supposed to be a Congregationalist, Mr. Adams? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be practicing frugality, right? And he would take crap, even though I can't do the numbers in my head, but it was probably the equivalent of $30,000 a year.
Yeah, but that's a man who has a career. These people
don't
have careers.
That's what I'm saying. I know, and that's not what I mean. Is that's nothing. These people make hundreds of thousands of dollars in Congress, and if you put together with their benefits, they can double dip on pensions, and they get their healthcare benefits are fantastic. I mean, so they get more than that top line suggests, And by the way, Biden's taking a paycheck. Biden certainly doesn't need a paycheck, but unlike Donald Trump, he's taking the money.
Oh, are you shocker?
No, but I'm saying,
but I'm just
it's
saying
all business as usual again, Laura.
But to me, it blows my mind that these people who go in for public service and to help the people
it's
not
been like that for a very, very long time.
Just 2020 vision should tell you something's wrong.
Yeah. I know it hasn't been like that, unfortunately, for a very long time. Before this thing craps out on me again, I want to show them something from the other day, which is circled already. So I know it's hard for them to see, but it should make it very easy for them to see. Which is The window there. That should be it. All right. This was from Rasmussen the other day too. Okay. This is, and I know it's hard for you to read. I'll read it for you again. All right. This is out the other day, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, so I wanted to talk about it. Is China, and when we do the monthly poll, listen to how Rasmussen is phrasing some, because we have some great ideas. We'll be sharing it with people on Locals. It took me a little bit, but I have questions I want to ask in different ways. You'll never see another pollster ask a question like this. All right, but Rasmussen also gets very creative. All right. First, they ask, is China an ally or an enemy of the United States, or is it somewhere in between? The half the country, but if you 50% view them as an enemy. Only 8% view them as an ally. Somewhere in between is 37%, which is pretty scary that some people would even, that 37% would even say that, but not sure is 5%. Okay, so overwhelmingly, by a large margin, even though it's a bare, 50% majority, probably it's, most Americans hold the view that, I don't even want to call them Republicans. That's not even right. Most Americans hold the Trumplican view that China is an enemy, not an ally. All right. And does China represent a bigger threat to the United States militarily or economically? Overwhelmingly, almost 7 out of 10, 69%, say economically they are the threat, not militarily. I see them as both. Frankly, I would have probably put, if it was me designing this, I probably would have said militarily, economically, both unsure. All right, or unsure, not enough. I don't know enough to form an opinion. Whatever. But because I believe there's without a doubt some people who chose economically simply because they view the short term, it's more an economic threat. But look at the number; it's overwhelming.
If you look at the broader picture,
right? Does the U.S. government ignore abuses by the Chinese government that it would not tolerate in other countries? And I'm going to talk about something else before I move on. Because of China's economic power. The overwhelming majority, almost 2/3, 63%, said yes. No was 16%, and a rather sizable 21% was not sure. So what does that tell you? It's more than 63. If you lean those people, if you lean them, they'll lean, at least some of them are going to lean. No is not going to get every single one of that 21%. Is President Biden's policy toward China better than President Trump's China policy? Worse than Trump's China policy? Or is it about the same? 50% said worse. And this is why when I saw this, I got to thinking about some questions that I wanted to phrase. And I wanted to make it really about asking certain voter remorse questions without being so blatant like the media does it, right? Yeah, a little bit more sneaky about it. And I don't want to. We'll go over it when it's time to go over it. But yeah, I don't want people taking anything. Yeah. So when I'm ready to go over it with the audience and then we launch it, then that's different. But yeah, I feel like a lot more people would be honest about this specific issue. A lot more people would be honest if it was asked a little differently. All right. Now there's already 50% here, so it's pretty obvious. And in Michigan, I went back after seeing the responses to this. Guys, go back to the election 2020 the election 2020 public polling project. Go and look at the question of who you trust more to handle China. There is no doubt erosion here. First of all, Trump always got that. He always had the advantage on that. But I can't help but to wonder if I phrase the question a little bit differently now. If you had a choice, who would you trust more? Now that you, whatever, kind of thing. I don't want to say the specific words. Yeah. I have a very strong feeling that there are a lot of people out there who have a remorse and who maybe ignored this issue because they viewed it as a last-minute attempt to try to smear Biden, the whole China, thing with Tony Bobulinski. And now that some things are playing out, they're rethinking things. All right. And then also, too, I cannot leave this page without mentioning the New York Post story. And I made a wise guy comment on social media, but it's serious.
I know.
Under Joe Biden, you want to talk about business being back? Business being back to as usual, business as usual being back under Biden.
Quid pro quo, Joe.
The U.S. is literally taking it, fill in the blank, from China under Joe Biden. Folks, they made our diplomats take rectum COVID-19 tests. Go ahead, you say what you're going to say, and then I'm going to, for all the idiots out there who think this was a mistake, I'm going to add to it. Go ahead, say what.
I just don't understand the logic. Like, why would you do that when you already know that one test?
You mean, why would you admit to it?
Not only why.
Because I'm going to tell you why the Chinese did it. But go ahead.
Oh, I know why, because of you.
You know.
But,
and damn. Right, go ahead.
But what I'm just saying is, come on now. If somebody turned around and said this test, even though you can test it through your nasal passage, but we want to test you, but you have to bend over. Really? You're going to do it?
A swab, we have 2-minute tests now. They don't have to go all the way back even in your nasal cavity anymore.
No,
They did this on purpose. This was absolutely intentional. The Chinese are funny like this. And by the way, since Joe Biden was elected, I would strongly suggest you all get very familiar with the Chinese and how they operate. I'm talking about their culture, their business etiquette, their political strategy, how they maneuver. Get to know them. Hell, learn Mandarin if you're proficient in foreign languages. It's a smart thing to do. I'm telling you. It's like if you could rewind time during the Cold War, people would tell you it's smart to learn Russian and learn how the Russians behave. Okay, the long telegraph, all right? I'm giving you a long telegraph kind of warning right now for the modern era. You better get real familiar with the Chinese and how they operate. This was absolutely intentional. They already tested Biden with the flyovers, Laura, Taiwan, all right? They already tested him. He failed every single test they have lobbed at him so far. He called Xi like an ally, which was what they wanted to see. If they did that, if they made those provocations, would Joe Biden still, as a new president, pick up the phone and address him as an ally instead of what Donald Trump did, which I'll tell you what Donald Trump did to Xi Jinping, which was hilarious, all right? It's the only reason why he bombed Syria, probably. I mean, really. He did it while she was there. Would you like some more cake? Oh, that's nothing. Don't worry about that. The tomahawks are in the air. He was letting Xi Jinping know he's a serious character. Yeah. He's a serious guy. And if you step out of line and try any of these tests on me, I may just send one of your carrier killers, right back at you. Right, exactly. So, I mean, that was how Donald Trump chose to deal with Xi Jinping after Xi Jinping tried to test him. And he didn't even test him the way he tested Joe Biden. He did it through his proxy, North Korea. All right? Here, we have a very different situation. He knows Joe Biden is weak. He's on the hook. They got him by the cojones. We have already talked about this ad nauseum. They did this on purpose to embarrass us. Much like the Iranians did with the U.S. sailors when they held them at gunpoint and made them sit on their knees, all right, made them kneel down with their hands behind their heads. This was meant to embarrass us. This is how the Chinese operate. And nobody asked Jen Psaki about this in that light at all. Nobody thought to ask about this to the White House press secretary. This is unbelievable. At least the media under Obama asked about that, with Iran. I mean, it was all over Fox. Fox forced that issue. But here we have this, and they're really trying, it was an accident. It was a miscommunication, a delayed order that went through. I mean, the excuses are ridiculous. It was absolutely intentional. They literally made our diplomats bend over.
And it will be in their history books for all time of how America was literally subjugated.
How they literally got American diplomats to bend over. I mean, this is the way they are. I mean, we're not equipped to deal with these people. We're not. No, we're not. We are not equipped to deal with them. And that's been like that for a long time. Ever since China opened their markets and our Western businessmen in general even before the governments. Their governments were getting rolled. Diplomats were getting rolled already.
Yeah.
But the Swiss had a lot of success when China first opened their markets. And they tried, and even one of their top negotiator guy wrote the book on Chinese business negotiations, and we listened to none of it. And in the 80s, we're very gung-ho. We want things done immediately. We want to like rush the situation. And they use this against us. All right? They know their adversary. They know the characteristics of their adversary. This was meant, if you're a Trump supporter, all right, or you're an America Firster, this was absolutely meant for you. This was meant for you. Ha ha. We installed our guy, and you have to bend over and take it.
Literally.
How could nobody be talking about this? How could this not be huge news? That's how much influence China exudes over our media, over our political class. It's incredible. It really is incredible. All right. So with that,
but
go
no
ahead. We're almost there.
Though.
No resistance whatsoever.
No resistance.
The White House did it again. When he does what he does, and he issues those tests, he makes those provocations, and then you pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, Chairman Xi, it's your good buddy in the U.S., your good ally, Joe Biden. You already sent the signal. You're weak. You're not going to be a problem at all. And we can do basically whatever we want." I mean, they're literally laughing at us. So again, best thing I can tell you to do. What is it over there? Actually, it is over there, isn't it?
Grab.
We could give them another book tip. I think it's right over there. If not, I will get it for them and I'll send a link out on Amazon. But you have to get to know how the Chinese operate, because the reality is a China-friendly president has been elected, and if you thought their influence grew under Barack Obama, then you really haven't seen anything yet. No. You haven't seen anything yet, because we just spent an hour talking about how influence peddling works in this country. Yeah, it is a white cover, but yeah, that's Nations and Identities. That's a fantastic book too, but yeah, you haven't seen anything yet, because this guy was China's guy, and here we are. All right, so it's the top of the hour. I'll get it when we're on the break, Laura. All right, but yeah, it's the top of the hour, so we're going to take a real quick break. While we do, all right, while we do, throw your questions into the Q&A, and we'll spend the next half hour to hour answering questions. All right, it's just incredible. It really is just incredible. I see some of the response, but look, I'm not saying this to be like this is not to be critical just of Joe Biden or to be or to be provocative or anything like that. This is the way it's going to be. It's the way it's going to be. All right, so we'll be back after Bad Habit. Get your Q&As in there. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. All right, if you like the video, hit the like button. We'd appreciate that. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. It's still a free country for now. All right, and Facebook users, you will automatically be alerted. So if you're watching on Facebook and you like the page People's Pundit Daily, you will be notified immediately that we're going to go live. Gitmo.life, people. The audience is growing. Gitmo.life. The user interface is better than Twitter. And we, again, have not been back on Parler. I know a lot of you guys were happy Parler was back up, and I haven't had activity there. That's intentional, because it's not exactly the same as it was before. All right? So with that, we're going to take this real quick break. All right? Hang tight. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for overnight. Just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, we're back. All right, you're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit, and follow me on Gitmo Life at People's Pundit. Sign up to locals at peoplespundit.com. No, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, by the way, that book suggestion for the day is by Scott Seligman. All right, he is, I don't want to say the only authority, but one of, if you need a starting point to learn about the Chinese, how everything from business etiquette to culture to political diplomacy to political maneuvering, if you need a foundation to understand the Chinese in these arenas, then Scott is your man. All right, the name of the book I'm talking about is Chinese Business Etiquette, a guide to protocol, manners, and culture in the People's Republic of China. It was written in March of 1999, and it is as much true today as it was then. It was a period when, I don't want to say they're not ideologues, because they are dangerous they are dangerous communists. There's no doubt about it. But they are not the ideologues they once were under Mao Zedong. All right? Which is how you really say it. Not Zedong. All right? It's Zedong. All right? But anyway, they are not that rabid as they once were. And they're more practical. But they're still nationalists. All right? China, Zhangguo, means center, the middle. All right? If you are a Chinese person, Zhangguo Ren, you are a person from the center of the earth. Like, that's literally, basically, it's rough translation. They believe themselves to be the center of everything. Okay? That is their mindset. You need to learn that.
And they will do anything to save
And they will do anything to make that right, to preserve that. And as the center of the world, as the sun of the solar system, if you want to use that phrase, they should be the dominant force. And by the way, that's how that will achieve a greater harmony. The world would be in a more stable position if they were the dominant force. I'm not just talking about regional hegemony. All right, they do want, and they are a regional hegemon already. They are, and a hegemon is a dominant nation state. And there's a regional. There's only ever been one global hegemonic power, and that was the United States after the Cold War. Although I would argue, as a realist, that that's a myth, Laura. That's just not true. You know, you cannot project your power like that. Nobody can. It's not without what Snyder said was like chasing the mythical city of El Dorado, right? You're like the Spanish who will spend your entire treasure, you will empty the royal coffers to find El Dorado, because if you could just get there, you'll be so powerful. But it's a myth. It can't be achieved, and you're just going to bankrupt yourself in the process. That's what the Bill Cristols of the world don't understand, by the way, and the Liz Cheneys. There is no El Dorado. It's not real. You're never going to find it, Liz. And you're just going to bankrupt everybody in the process. All right? But anyway, Scott, that book it's brilliant. It'll give you a great starting point. If you don't even have to know Chinese, you don't have to speak Mandarin or anything, but he does go into some language details, simply like I just did, so you understand. If you understand these translations, then you get a better idea of their motivations and their mindset. All right, so he does get into some of these terms simply because you have to understand where they're coming from. Okay? Anyway, he's an award-winning author, writer, historian, genealogist, and retired corporate executive and career China hand. What does that mean? Well, he has an undergraduate degree in history from Princeton University, but and his concentration was in American civilization. He's got a master's degree from Harvard. They called him, all right, he is fluent in Mandarin, lived in Hong Kong. Everybody from the Gap, I think, did too. Or no, I lost you. It was hired by the Gap. But everybody who wanted a foot in Chinese markets needed to know how it worked. You know, you can't just go to the ministry, I want to open up a chain here or whatever. And he was the man to speak to. All right? Do not fall for this tactic. Do not do this. The customs here are like this because nobody understands that. The problem with U.S. diplomats and the U.S. in general, Donald Trump may be the first person ever to understand how the Chinese operate because of his experience in his business dealing, in real business. We forget that it was his buildings gave them places to, that's why when he said the Chinese are not our friends, they're out to do this, he knew firsthand. He understood them. And he's the only one who does, because you read Scott, you read all of them. We just are a repeating history. The history of our diplomacy with China since the opening of Chinese markets has been one roll after the other. They just roll us over. We don't get it. They basically frustrate us. They exhaust us. And they mock us. And it works. I don't know what to tell you. It works. And the ignorance to how they behave and their motivations is incredible. It will terrify you once you get your head around it. Because you're wondering, how the hell did these people, how are these people in charge all of this time? Well, because it's very easy. And that's how I knew, by the way, as soon as you listen to Tony Bobolinsky, Joe Biden he's corrupt. He's on the take. They got him. Mm-hmm. That's the Chinese model. You get your hooks into a family member like Hunter Biden. And I'm not making fun of his addiction. I'd never do that. Not me. Addiction can hit anybody. But you find the weak link like that. And you get your hooks into them.
And you
and you expose it. And then you say this can be the easy way or the hard way. We can stuff your family's pockets with cash, which they'll then kick back to you. Or we can really embarrass the hell out of you. Which one's it going to be, Joe? Which one is it going to be? And inevitably, it's always, well, how much? And that's where it goes from there. It's obvious once you know it. Anyway, check it out. Let's get some questions in here, Laura. What do we got?
All right. So nobody wants any questions. No, I'm joking.
Particularly relevant to what we're discussing today, by the way.
Yes. Hold on. But there are also.
Oh, and real quick, just thank you. If it is impossible to keep up with watching all the super chats, and stuff like that. We always do tell you there are other ways to support us. But then giving. Remember, Google takes a ton. YouTube takes a ton from super chats. But we do want to thank you for them still. There are those of you who still do it. You do it every episode. And even though I may not mention it, we do see you. All right? And we very much appreciate it. All of you, whether you give super chats or you just share the video. All right? But go ahead. I'm ready. I just wanted to mention. Because they fly by. They're like...
Yeah, no, they go by really fast. Well, you already answered the one about how to... Are there any more Chinese books? Not Chinese books about China to give more relevance.
Yeah, he's actually himself. He's got a bunch. I'm looking at a couple right here. Because there are several. The other one I would say is The Chinese Way in Business: Secrets of Successful Business Dealings in China. And while that focuses more on business, where Scott gives a broader, it's also called Chinese business etiquette, but he goes into why a lot more. But The Chinese Way in Business is another good one. Another good one. All right. And it's not just business. Mm-hmm. This is how they deal. This is how they operate. All right. Which is why Trump was so damn successful with them. All right. Whether you like them or not. Listen, before COVID conveniently popped up, he had them by the shorts. They were done. They had to agree to phase 2 in the negotiations. Their manufacturing sector was dropping 20% quarterly. They were done. He had them. Coronavirus saved them. Take that for what you want to take it. A virus that did not come from a meat market, like we were told. Maybe somebody was just too careless with it. Save them. They were in deep trouble. He knew what he was doing. He absolutely knew what he was doing. First person ever. A damn shame. But it's because of his business experience with them. That is what gave him that understanding. You could spend an entire career at the State Department looking at all these papers and, reading all these studies and all of this intelligence, and you'd still be a tool. You'd still not, and they are. The State Department is one of the most incompetent bureaucracies ever. But yeah, go ahead.
Will China and the U.S. have any military
Provocations?
Provocation, yes. I was going to say provocative. Incidents in the South China Sea in the next 4 years?
There is a school of thought in international relations. All right, and I'm talking about it. When I say that, I mean I would say the security apparatus or the foreign policy establishment. If I'm talking about D.C. and the State Department and the Defense Department, right? I'm talking about academia. People who actually defend their thesis, unlike people like Bruce Russert, who write the democratic peace theory and then can't even defend their thesis. So what does he do? He brings his garbage to Washington, D.C., and everybody buys it and blah, blah, blah. There is a school of thought out there in realism that says that it's pretty much unavoidable. And the South China Sea will be it because of consumption rates for energy and natural resources. Even Hillary Clinton, had made a comment when she was the Secretary of State under Joe Biden that the South China Sea was vital to the national security interests of the United States. And what that means when anyone says that, a diplomat or what, is that that's worth going to war for. All right?
And there is a school of thought that when you have a power that is declining and you have a power that is rising, and they both are relying on a vital interest, all right, then that point of vital interest will be the catalyst for inevitable conflict between the countries. Now, China knows this, and actually a lot of them do subscribe to this. But they're trying to make history by doing it without even fighting at all, without even firing a single shot. And that's through economic takeover, basically. Economic hostile takeover. But one that's, more like a merger and acquisition than it is a total war, a conflict. War. Yeah. Right. So, but that's another I may have reached my limit for book pitches, but there is that school of thought that would say it's inevitable. I think the South China Sea is probably it. The Chinese know that, and that's why they're militarizing. But at this rate, their plan's going to work because they won't need to defend the South China Sea at this point. They won't. They will have enough people in this country willing to just bend over, like the diplomats were willing to bend over and take their COVID test. I mean, that's the sad truth of it. Their plan appears to be working. 10 years ago, I would have said it's probably not going to end well. But 10 years ago, there wasn't this outright, what's the word? Like Barack Obama was not willing to sell our country down the road to China. All right? Like Barack Obama was not willing to do that. Putting Joe as the head of U.S.-China relations, he viewed to be an accident. So, not an accident, a mistake. Excuse me. So, what does that tell you? Even the Washington Post, I will never forget that op-ed, that Washington Post editorial, the Sunday when he came back, saying what in the hell explains how weak Joe Biden just was over in China. This is not what Barack Obama told him to do. Well, now we know the answer to that question, by the way. We didn't back then, but we know it now. Joe Biden was already bought and paid for. His son was already the hook. They had him. But even the Washington Post and the Barack Obamas of the Democratic Party were not willing to do that. So right now, I'd say if there is a conflict, it's more likely than not that's what will be the catalyst. But I'm not sure there will be an actual physical physical conflict, total war, which is what they call a war between two great nations. I don't see it. I see people just rolling over.
I have all sorts of different types of questions.
They blamed the president for a virus that was not his fault. So what does that tell you? 10 years ago, we would have wanted Xi Jinping's head on a pike, and no party would have been able to resist the outrage among the public. Now look at us. Oh my God.
Bending over for
what a far fall from grace that has been.
Rich, did Florida really vote 2020 to hike the state minimum wage in Florida for $15 an hour? No one's talking about it.
Yeah, was it 15 though? I don't think it was 15. And then Ron DeSantis is trying to do everything in his power to delay the hike. They did approve a minimum wage hike, and Ron DeSantis is doing everything in his power to mitigate the damage from it because it didn't even need to be a $15 minimum wage hike to damage tourism badly. That is the problem. Florida is a tourist, well, not only, but relies heavily on tourism. And all of the studies suggested this was going to be bad. Even a moderate minimum wage hike, Laura, would have been bad. We have one, obviously, in Florida, but it's kind of low. What was it prior to this? Something?
Oh.
It was low.
I don't remember.
But the truth is,
No, it was $10.50.
Not anymore. No, it wasn't that high, was it? I don't know. It's been so long. I don't know.
I remember the school system was hiring.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking you. Because what the school would have had to obey. So what did they pay a baseline service worker?
I think it was 10. Maybe it went to 11, but last I recall is $10.50.
$10.50. That's what somebody who came off the line and at Apples would have. Okay. All right, so see, that's not that bad. But yeah, then it may be. Then the commenter may be right. It may have been $15 an hour. But that would not be good for tourism. Because, look, every waiter and waitress, Laura, who works down at, like, what's that crab shack you like? Krabby Joe's? Was that it? What is it? I mean, they're not really making that little of money, right? Because they get their right, they have tips and I mean that's not so it's not as black and white as it looks, but it will hurt them if you force something Krabby Joe's, isn't it? If you force them to pay $15 an hour, then you're gonna hurt, especially before COVID. I mean, with COVID, killing the restaurant industry. If there ever was a time for the minimum wage, it certainly was not now.
Now, great follow-up question. Somebody wants to know, Noodles, what happens to the people who worked up to $15 an hour? Would their pay have to raise? So
that's a good question. Yeah. No. That's the answer to that.
Isn't that sad, though?
No. People so everybody else who worked their way up to a higher wage just gets what's the word?
Shafted?
Yeah. But also like disrespected. It's almost it's more than shafted. It's like a disrespect because a lack of regard for I don't know how to put it. A lack of regard for their work. For their achievements. It's the same thing with, newly arrived immigrants who did it the correct way, and then there's an amnesty,
Joe's Crab Shack, yeah.
Joe's Crab Shack. I was so close.
Oh, Jeep and Cheap said it.
Laura loves Joe's Crab Shack. And get this, I'm watching the other day. I forgot to even tell Laura about this. I'm watching the other day, Laura. And you remember how they used to do karaoke? We loved. Laura could convince me once upon a time to get out there. She could put a couple drinks in me, and then make me sing Bohemian Rhapsody, or Desperado, or something, or Elvis, Suspicious
Elvis
Minds.
Suspicious.
That was fun. I'm glad there's no cell phone footage of that. Although I killed it. Can we be real?
Oh yes, you did.
I killed it.
I just swinging and everything. Yep, I exposed you.
Oh man. I'm glad. I killed it, meaning that it sounded good.
No,
it just
Rich can sing, guys. Rich can sing.
I don't want that to be public. But anyway, we love karaoke, and over there was a guy, Laura, who was over there doing karaoke like every week, and he killed his wife, and was living over there. No joke, he was living in Daytona. I swear to God, I forgot to tell you this. It was like during the time period. I was watching it on TV, and it was like it was like during our time period.
And, great, good time.
And he didn't look too familiar, but anyway, he was but he did kind of look a little familiar. Anyway, he was from Louisiana, I think. Louisiana or Georgia, but a close neighboring state. It's either Louisiana or Georgia. And I think anyway, he killed his wife because he didn't want. It's some crazy story. He was in trouble. He was going to be indicted. He was embarrassed. He was married. He had two grown children.
He didn't want to be embarrassed in front of his
so
wife.
He kills her in the morning. He wakes up in the morning with a little 22, I think, or something. Puts 3 in her, gets in his car and drives to Daytona, and was singing karaoke there every week.
Oh, good time.
And then one of the people, somebody recognized him. And called. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
So I wanted to, sorry about that, folks. I had to tell Laura that because this guy did look a little familiar to me. And Laura loves that place. And I'm thinking, I think this guy looks.
Oh, geez,
yeah.
Don't give me the heebie-jeebies.
Anyway, he was lying, telling everybody he was like some retiree, just there playing golf, kind of thing.
On a interesting note.
Different note.
Michael Lashley. Who are the guys recommending these obscure backstabbers to Trump? Who keeps doing it? So we can,
Yeah, that's a really good question. The truth is quite a few people. It's not just one person. I have said this once and I'll say it again. It's true. MAGA, however people say it, The movement was based. It had a lot of grifters in it. I mean, a lot of. That's just true, guys. I mean, they're just real believers. They're true believers, no doubt, just like anything else. But there were a lot of people who did see the opportunity in becoming or latching on to that. And it's hard to parse them out, I guess. Now we've had 4 years, and we know who really is a true believer and who's not. Anyone new who pops up on the scene and is new, I think that's just a waste of time. Where were you during the, where were you and during the fight? That's what I would tell people if I was you, like that fraud in Ohio. There's a lot of them, and Trump is still friendly with Kevin McCarthy. We just talked about him before with his favorabilities. He is still friendly with some of these people. So it's not just one person. I wish I could just point to somebody like a lot of people do. Like, Jared does it. But that's not true. It's not...
well, Jared didn't help.
Well, Jared has given some really bad advice, if you want. My own personal opinion.
His pollster really was bad.
John?
Yeah.
John, I know you butcher his name. I don't know why. I know he thinks John is great. I mean, and I'm not trying to say this to attack John for the sake of attacking him. But the fact of the matter is, you know this, we've been on the opposite side. We've been on the same side. I just have seen him his client to death. And I feel that's what he did. Look, he had Trump up by 1 or 2 points in Michigan before the election and handed Donald Trump the poll in Michigan that said, you're up by 2. Candidates have to make a decision based on what their pollster gives them. From watching the show, we had Trump down in Michigan. Could he have won that state? That is the one state with, regardless of all the shenanigans, I think Joe Biden probably would have hung on. He needed to go back to Kent County. Remember?
Yes.
He needed to go back to certain parts of Macomb. Yeah, Macomb locked down, but if he could have fought a little bit harder. I have a totally different point of view and different battle plan than most others like John and the rest of the normal people do. I'm not going to go where you are already strong to run up the numbers. I'm going to play in the enemy's backyard, and I'm going to pick votes out from underneath them. And, by the way, if you look, for instance, let's take Macomb County. You're going to win northern Macomb, right? So Warren in the South is where you have an issue. There's a lot more gentry liberals there, all right? Or even former, gentry Bill Kristol-like Republicans. Do you not think that your supporters in northern Macomb are going to drive to the event in southern Macomb to come see? Of course they are. You're just going to be right in the backyard of the people that you're not appealing as much as you need to appeal to. So you have the potential to just increase that tent. The object is to make the tent bigger, not just maximize the tent you already have. Maximize capacity in the tent you already have. Is to make the tent bigger. All right? And this is why, I saw him do it to Bibi Netanyahu too. I'm not going to get into this, but we have had clients on the either other side or clients who are on the same side, but just with different candidates. Mm-hmm. And the Israeli people were saying clearly, yes, we care about national security. And yes, we care about the economy. But Bibi has not made good on certain economic reforms that he promised in healthcare and in other areas of life. So while foreign policy matters, while the survival of Israel matters, it always matters. Yes. We have been voting on this for years. We can't just allow him to use that issue to skirt meeting our other needs. It was very clear healthcare was a serious, serious issue. And John McLaughlin's telling Bibi Netanyahu, all you got to do is run on foreign policy. You're going to lock it up. Likud's going to lock it up just on foreign policy. That was not true. And he led Bibi astray. Okay? He led the whole damn Likud astray.
Well, he had a run of a lifetime because of that.
I mean, really.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
You had to make up the
He was campaigning till the final vote. I mean,
that's bad.
An election he should have won in a landslide. And then I saw him do it in Florida, which I've told this story on the air before. He's leaking to the press that Salazar is ahead of Shalala by 6 points,
yeah.
blah, 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 blah. You know, talking to Mark Cavuto, Politico. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Nobody is ahead of Donna Shalala. Everybody's going to lose. Angie was the closest, but she still was down. But she was the only one in the sampling hour, but she was still down. It was going to be a bad year for Republicans. But he was blowing smoke up Maria's butt. That's what he does. Eric Cantor. He told Eric Cantor he was safe in Virginia 7. He was safe. And we're looking at this like, whoa, this guy Dave Bratt is going to beat the House Majority Whip. The House Majority Whip is going down. That's ridiculous. The number one issue was immigration in that election. Immigration. He told Eric Cantor he was safe, 13-point lead or some ridiculous lead. Mm-hmm. We had Cantor going down anywhere between 5 and 12 points, depending on what turnout looked like. But he was going down. And he went down. Now Abigail, now a former spook, is in that district. Republicans didn't even really try that hard to take it back, and she barely won. She barely won re-election. The best time to take out an incumbent is always after their first term, when there's a political swing, right? Like a first term incumbent midterm, where the incumbent's party, in power party, always gets creamed. That almost always happens. Not every time, but almost always. 9/11 was an exception to that rule.
The honeymoon period's over.
Yeah, the honeymoon
Everybody
period's
saw you
over.
for what you
Yep.
are.
You're not as big. You're not as strong. Your get out the vote is not as big yet. You're not as well known in the district. You have not yet become a permanent fixture. Like, by the way, Marieli Salazar came back in Florida 27 and defeated Donna Shalala after her first term in 2020. That is what Republicans needed to do if they were going to take back Virginia 7. Now it's just going to get more gentry, more gentry, more gentry. That was once a very conservative and mostly rural district. I mean, really. Even the suburbs were not affluent, stiff upper lip, give me another tea and crumpet suburb. I mean, that's not what it was. Yep. Yep.
All right.
I don't like this David character. He's too crass for me.
Fuck you.
One lump or two.
All right. Tom, I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'm going to try. Tom Forsyth wants to know, how bad is the education system that the government has to force companies to pay high school graduates more? Turn up your volume.
I'll turn it up. Oh, I turned it down when somebody was complaining about bad habit.
Yeah.
All right. Then we're just going to have to get you to... See, I can hear myself a lot better now. We're just going to have to swap it back.
That's fine.
Education, money on education is not the problem. And again, I would strongly suggest looking this up on People's Pundit Daily. There's a graph from an article a while ago on People's Pundit Daily that talks about spending per pupil. Even under Trump, by the way, spending per pupil was a record, right? So this idea, like, Trump was going to come in, he's a Republican, what about education? Nobody spent more money than Donald Trump on kids. But that's not the problem. The problem is teachers' unions, and the problem is lack of choice. I mean, really. There's 2 articles that are really good, and you got to search for win-win or something. School win-win, it'll pop up. And then that really shows data on school choice and what does it really take all the talent and money out of the public school system, or does it force public school systems to get better? And the answer is it forces public school systems to get better. That's it. This is not debatable. These things are lies. These talking points are lies started by corrupt teachers' unions and perpetuated by ignorant people who don't know any better or haven't looked at the issue and the topic. It's just not true. It forces them to get better. And that's a great article, and we looked at different places around the country where they implemented these programs. By the way, Florida was one of them. Florida had among the worst education systems in the country. routinely was in the bottom. I think Florida was bottom 5 before they implemented the school voucher system, and now it shot up. Particularly of note were literacy rates for black and brown children. Hispanics particularly shot up through the roof. That's called success. All right, but then there's another one, another article that will show you a chart, spending per pupil around the world, the U.S. versus everybody else. It's ridiculous. What do they have, or what don't they have? What political forces don't they have that we do have in this country? And it's really obvious. It's really obvious. And then also, too, by the way, if you did search for it, you'll probably pop up an article about a census report spending under the Trump administration per pupil, which is really incredible. It's illuminating. But yeah, education in this country is not great. It's not.
All right.
And now this is like this distance learning thing, which I imagine he's alluding to more. You know, this is just going to make an already bad system worse. It's such a shame. It's such a damn shame. By the way, Trump already gave the money. To respond to somebody, you're wrong. Donald Trump already funded the states to implement the CDC guidelines to not just reopen, but safely reopen for in-person learning. This is a lie you are being told, and it was obviously sold because you believe it. But understand, you are ignorant and you are wrong. All right. I mean, I just don't know how else to say it.
No, I get it. Omanel also said that high school graduates cost less and are more trainable than liberal arts college graduates. But it's probably true because it's less resistance. Christina B., why do you think these publishers are anti-Trump? Ruining their kickback cash cow versus selling real books. They are all complicit.
That is a fantastic question. And right there, I'm just leaving up the consumer sentiment because it's not on PPD yet. Somebody asked me for it. So I pulled up Econo Day, which I actually like. Although their forecast is a little bit different than ours. We include a couple of people they don't. Our consensus, I mean. Anyway, that's a fantastic question. And what I mean when I say that American fascism is more dangerous than the breeds of fascism that we had to deal with in the 20th century. Because unlike the breeds in the 20th century, they don't have to rely on force with American fascisms. Like, so publishing, who publishes books, which banks are going to do business, allow campaign contributions to be, to be received with their bank, who's going to allow this person's campaign committee to have a checking account here or whatever. They don't have to use government force to convince them because they're all little group thinkers and they're all all on the same train. They have the same rabid ideology. So they're not using a rational business model when they make these decisions. It is rational to them because they're ideologues, right? They're fascists and they don't realize they are, but many of them don't, but they are. And they're not thinking like a rational business would think. So profit, right? The incentive is no longer just profit. The incentive is this new, one-sided groupthink world, this hive mind. The hive is what they want. They want a hive mind. They don't like anybody who doesn't comply with the hive. So they don't need the government to go and march, like Hitler had the SS. They don't need an SS, a secret police, to go bang on the door and say, you published this book and we're going to burn it. The Fahrenheit 451 model, they don't need that because the publishers themselves will carry out the book burning because they're fanatics. It's more dangerous because it used to be we just had to deal with the force itself, right? If you can chop off the head of the snake, then the force goes with it. But here there is no head of the snake. There are all these little, it's not a snake. It's a hive. It's different. It's more dangerous, much more dangerous. You're dealing with either one bite or a million stings. I'll take the one bite over the million stings any day. That's a great question. I hope I answered that with as much, like, I'm trying to tap metaphors here, but I hope I did, because it's people really have to understand this, what we're up against,
Todor, I don't even want to try your last name. Wants to know, could you ask Rich about Illinois 16 and who is the America First candidate there?
Yeah, I know. We were talking about that the other day, actually. The answer to that, and I'm sad to say, we don't know yet. It's still very early. And the reason why that's not a cop-out. You'll see what happens with campaigns if you get more involved with them. These people start coming out of the woodwork. And it's ultimately, even if the candidate is legit, okay, it's ultimately the candidate's job to run their campaign. They are the boss. I cannot tell you how many once promising candidates get duped by these people and then get penetrated, basically, by these non-pure motives, and they get sunk. And if that, God forbid, turns into an actual congressman or woman, then you're talking about rewards to a chief of staff or a legislative assistant, and then they just become part of this person's permanent apparatus, their permanent entourage, right? Because every congressman and woman gets a staff or an entourage, really. Some are bigger than others, clearly. But it goes from having like a good idea with a good candidate into a corrupted candidate with a message only, into a corrupt establishment figure. It's just a terrible cycle, and I'm not sure, we're not there yet. We're just not there yet to know whether or not any of them will be one of them. I like one, I do, but I know people who are telling me that it's not what it seems. So I don't want to spit out names or anything yet, but I personally, I like the person, and I like the look of the person. I like the message it conveys, and then I have people telling me that it's a lie. And by the way, some of the people that are being hired to do some of the consulting, that would support what I'm being told, which is sad. So I don't know yet. I don't know the answer yet. Reserve judgment is where I'm going with this.
All right, I love it.
I didn't pick one. That's the problem. I didn't personally call anybody over there and ask them to run like I have in other places.
We're looking for somebody, so.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to call every single person all over the country and recruit them. So there'll be some that I just like, but I'm more confident when it's me, like for Nevada or for Georgia. I'll be more confident to say, hey, listen, I plucked, I personally asked this person, so I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Rose wants to know, why did Biden not tell Kamala about bombing Syria? Jack reported that. She said she thinks.
Yeah, I don't think they really have much of a choice. This is a bit of a illusion, that they're over there making decisions. The truth of the matter is, all of these people jumped on Biden's wagon, and they didn't do it for nothing. So a lot of this stuff, that's how all of these executive orders got cranked out by historic numbers. Biden's administration is a pig to the trough like we've never seen. I mean, we have never seen this many people line up and have their rent seeking already set up for when they get in, right? So they already engaged in that rent seeking behavior, but in exchange for that, they wanted solids, right off the bat. Before you even get in there, I want to know what this executive order is going to sound like. I want to know what this military action is going to look like, right? So I think it's a bit of an illusion to think that Joe Biden was over there weighing a decision heavily and then conveyed it, his intentions to Kamala Harris, and the two of them discussed it and deliberated over this is a joke. People around, the forces of Susan Rice and the rest of them, they already put this into motion. I mean, they're not making it, those kinds of decisions. They're made for them already. Really, probably 2 months ago, they already had this conversation. hey, listen, when we get in, this is what we intend to do. Are you on board with that? And that's it, and they don't know when it's going to come. It just comes.
All right. So let me go to the top.
By the way, very different than Donald Trump, who had people working on things constantly behind the scenes, but then the boss had to sign off on it before anything happened. Very, very different. One of the major reasons they allied against Donald Trump, to include DC Republicans, foreign policy Republicans, stuff like that, is because of that 2018 Situation Room meeting. I'm telling you, when he told them that covert war is over, I want those soldiers out of there. And by the way, you're going to make this happen now. And by the way, get ready for Afghanistan, because when I circle back to you in 3 months, I don't want you to have some BS excuse that you haven't had time to put it together. They were appalled. Yeah, you could do that. They were absolutely appalled. They couldn't believe he was serious. And then they ran everybody, running to CNN, running all over the place, to Fox, to Catherine Herridge at Fox News. This guy's gonna pull us out of everywhere. The whole Defense Department fears that Afghanistan is imminent. He's gonna pull us out, and there'll be a vacuum, and then there'll be a new ISIS. And I mean, this is what they did. And he lost the support of a lot of people who were kind of willing to give him a chance, as long as he played ball. But he didn't play ball.
All right. Sister Told Ya. I love her name, Sister Told Ya.
Yeah, that's cool. I've seen that before.
She actually, I just want you to elaborate on this, because Toto was unfamiliar with Jim Jordan receiving donations from big tech.
Yeah.
So, he's showing. So, if you could, for Toto.
Yeah, listen, I like Jim, but Cernovich had him. He was right. Cernovich had him, and he got that. For those of you who don't know, they had the big tech guys in the hot seat, and they asked him nothing. There's a reason. The memo went out from Jim Jordan, who said, we're not going to touch this. We're not going here. That should have been a red flag to everybody a year and a half ago at this point when that happened. Because he'll go on Sean Hannity and scream about big tech censorship. But when when the rubber hits the road, when it's game time, folks, he caved. So
it was very disappointing.
I've been saying this about Jim Jordan for a while. It was black and white. You couldn't argue with it. And by the way, Jim Jordan was on Sean Hannity the night Mike Cernovich obtained and released that memo from him, and Sean Hannity asked him nothing. In fact, they did a whole very, very Twilight Zone-like segment about how Jim Jordan held their feet to the fire. I mean, it was crazy. So that also should let you know where Sean stands on certain things. Mm-hmm. Reason I'm not a big pusher of or a lover of the Hannity show, okay, is for two reasons. One, he's a little bit too competitive for my taste. I have seen him do things like, for instance, when Sebastian Gorka left the White House, I know somebody who booked Sebastian Gorka for an interview on his show, which was on over a weekend. Sean Hannity wanted the exclusive, but couldn't put him on till Monday. So he told Sebastian Gorka that you're either going to cancel the interview or I'm not going to have you on Monday because I want the only exclusive. Now, this isn't some show that threatens Hannity's position in media. He just is like that. He's a cutthroat. He is not like what you would expect conservatives to be, where you think the more everyone benefits, the better we all are, which is how conservatives are supposed to think and why you can beat back the forces of collectivism. If you really believe in that, it's your way, because conservatism is more like a way of life than it is an ideology. But if you don't practice what you preach, then you leave these holes for collectivists to fill. All right? Also, I will never get the 2012 Republican convention out of my head, where he was like furious on a certain person's booth position. And when these speakers were being done, they were getting hauled into their show and sitting them down. He was pissed that they were going on other shows first. It's ridiculous. It was ridiculous to the point where, again, he did what he did because that's his model. He would threaten them. You're not coming on Hannity if you don't come on first. So walk past this booth. And then, it's ridiculous, guys. This is who he is. That, and he's a cheerleader. 2 words. TikTok. TikTok. Well, the clock is still ticking, Sean. Where are the indictments? You misled everyone during the Mueller investigation. Yes, you were right about the truth about the collusion story, but you were wrong about what was going to happen. And people like you fractured the Trump base when he needed it to be united the most.
Together, yeah.
The most. At a critical time, you filled people's heads with false hope about justice coming down any day now. That was never going to happen. The email between Jim Comey and John Brennan, and by the way, Jim Clapper, I saw almost 4 years ago. It was just in Just the News last month. John Solomon knew all about that email. Sarah Carter knew all about that email. What I'm talking about is a smoking gun about the dossier. It flatly is them arguing about whether or not they should use an uncorroborated, clearly discredited, not intel product, but more of an opposition research product to launch an investigation they knew was fake. To launch an intel op, which is what it was, that they knew was disinformation. And people at the Justice Department knew about the existence of that email forever. Forever. Bill Barr did not need all of this time to investigate. John Durham knew what happened immediately. They didn't do anything, not because they were launching some thorough investigation. They didn't do anything because they were protecting the institution. And every night at 9 p.m., Sean Hannity is on there. TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. It was almost as bad as Bill Mitchell and his white hat theories. That was the worst. Yes, Michael Flynn. Yes, General Michael Flynn pled guilty to a felony, lost his family home because it was all some elaborate plan to root out the bad guys. I can't quite put Sean in that basket, but he's the runner-up.
He comes in second.
When the last few remaining not corrupt rank and file is telling us nothing is going to happen. This is a corrupt bureau. The entire floor at Maine Justice is corrupt. Everybody knows what happened. Nothing is going to be done about it. You're telling me Sean Hannity wasn't hearing that too? So let me get this straight. I can make contact with these people in Gainesville, Florida, but Sean Hannity is somehow not privy to this information? Please. And by the way, obviously anyone, and I know Sarah knows this, and I know John knows this. They know, the both of them know it. And Sean should have known it too. The FISA court was complicit. That was obvious from day one. Otherwise, there was nothing stopping the FISA judge from hauling them back in and doing something about them, misleading them. Why did Rudy Contreras just up and leave the Flynn case? Why did he recuse himself? Come on. TikTok. Come on, man. TikTok, man. I don't like misleading people any which way. It doesn't matter if it comes out of Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity. He misled people. Maybe he wanted to believe it. I don't know. The only one who ever had their eyes wide open on this was Dan Bongino.
Yeah.
He was the only one who ever had his eyes wide open. He knew. Probably because he has a law enforcement background.
All right. Zadoon wants to know, is Arizona still a winnable state
Yes.
for Republicans?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Leafy Bug, I have a question. What was the deal with the unskew polls phenomenon in 2012?
Yeah.
What was the rationale behind it? Why was it flawed? Why did Romney camp buy into it so heavily? Was the Slimer right about it, or was he right for the wrong reason?
Yeah, he was right for the wrong reasons. Let's work backward. He was right for the wrong reasons. All of the polls that did predict Obama within the margin were right for the wrong reasons. They were wrong about the white vote. They were wrong about the working class vote. In truth, two things happened that the polls did not show. In fact, Obama did better with white voters than the polls showed he was going to do, and black voters, specifically black females, reelected Barack Obama. And low white turnout is what caused him to do better with white voters than the polling predicted. Also, something else the polls in the Slimer were wrong about, where there was no major surge in Hispanic votes. In fact, the Hispanic vote share, while the total of votes for Hispanics increased, their share of the electorate actually decreased. The only reason it increased was simply population changes. But black voters voted at the highest rates, then came white voters, then came Asian voters, then came Hispanic voters. They were the least likely to vote. There was not going to be, never was, a huge surge in Hispanic votes that was going to come out and elect Barack Obama after 4 years because whites rejected and repudiated him. That is not what happened. And in fact, he did much better among white working class people than the polls thought he was going to do. He won Ohio, guys. He won Iowa by 6 points. All right? 6 points. We've been over the 31 pivot counties. Donald Trump flipped every single one of them. Barack Obama won those white people. There are millions of Trumbull County kind of voters in Ohio. He won Macomb County, Barack Obama. Macomb, Michigan. I mean, we could go down the line. The polls were right on accident. They were right on accident. They were right for all the wrong reasons. And the rationale behind unskew the polls was that there was a big Democratic turnout in 2008 that was not going to be repeated. And that white voters voted Obama did very well with white voters for a Democratic candidate in 2008. But the idea was there would only be those white voters remaining in the electorate. The other minorities that came out and the young students that came out for Barack Obama in 2008, they weren't going to come out again for him in 2012, and that was going to doom him. And the polls were suggesting that these people, in fact, would. Well, the truth is they did not. But the only ones who did come out for him, not only at similar numbers, greater rates, were black voters. So the polls were just completely wrong. They were right at the top line, but for all the wrong reasons. And the unskewers were wrong because black voters, of course, were still going to come out and defend their president. Yes, Mitt Romney was going to win independents. He didn't win him in Florida, by the way. He lost him. But yes, he was going to win independents. But it wasn't going to be enough if Democrats followed, and Republicans did it in 2020 too. The electorate for an incumbent president is typically more partisan in favor of that incumbent than it is normally. All right? And that happened with Barack Obama in 2012. Democrats went stomping to the polls. Republicans didn't like Mitt Romney, and a lot of them stayed home. Mitt Romney would have done better with certain white independents, but they didn't vote. By the way, those white independents now are Trump voters. And many of them, most of them, are registered Republicans. Independents did not swing against Donald Trump. And I'm going to circle back to the unskewing question because this is relevant. It's related. They didn't swing against Donald Trump the way the media says they swung. Donald Trump converted those independents to Republicans. So 4 years ago, an independent in Florida who was voting for Donald Trump told us they were independent. Fast forward 4 years later, they called themselves Republicans. And they just voted for Donald Trump again. So Biden didn't crush Donald Trump with independents from 4 years ago. They were different people. That was what remained of the independent vote after Donald Trump cannibalized them and converted them into Republicans. Nate, that's why you were wrong. And now I'm not talking to the Slimer. I'm talking to Cohen. Nate, that is why you cannot pull Florida. This is why you routinely suck and embarrass yourself, bruh. I mean, just stop. Pull a smaller state, something a little easier. Then try your foot in it again. Try your hand at it again. You couldn't pull Iowa either. It was wrong in Iowa too. 9 points wrong. And predicted the wrong winner. All right. So that was the idea behind Unskew the Polls. And also the nonsense. And they're kind of pushing that philosophy in 16 and in 20, even though they mocked them at Romney supporters for doing it in 2012. The truth is, folks, the electorate changes demographically, but voting preferences don't shift like that. It's a matter of how does the electorate change demographically within that time period, and then who is actually going to go out and vote. That is a pollster's real job, determining that. That is why I am right all the time, and they are wrong all the time, because they haven't figured that out yet. They still think they're polling the same group of people year after year. And they think that these people are largely persuadable and the vote shifts back and forth. It's not the case. They have to first understand that that is their number one job. And then the second thing they have to understand is how to deal with the response bias that is challenging the industry. And now we developed a social desirability bias too, which was not always there at this level. Social desirability biases have been around forever, since polling began, but it was never this bad and never this developed and didn't impact this many people or this widely of a choice. So maybe you have a Brady effect or something like that. It's a specific candidate. He's a black candidate. White Democrats don't want to tell the pollster that they're not going to vote for him, right? That's a specific thing. Now we're talking about entire parties and cultures and beliefs. It's completely different than it was before. And in 2012, I was a very lone voice arguing the polls are not swinging. They don't need to be unskewed. You are reaching different people. It is that simple. Pew. Mitt Romney is not ahead by 4 points now. After the debate, you just reached more Republicans because Democrats were very unhappy with Barack Obama's performance. So when the pollster called, they didn't talk. That's it. It's textbook response bias. Mitt Romney is still going to win Mitt Romney is still going to lose the election. And people didn't want to hear that. The only time I had any moniker of doubt was when they contacted me and rolled out Orca and said, this is why you're wrong. You remember that? And then they asked for a conference call. We did a conference call. There was a bunch of people. They basically abused everybody who had any doubt, remember? They just abused them. I'm talking about Mitt Romney's campaign. I remember this older gentleman, I'm not going to say him, but was like, listen, isn't this subject to like some kind of hacking thing? Have you guys tested the servers, with that kind of traffic, blah, blah, blah. And they mocked him. As an old man who didn't understand tech, I am not kidding. On election day, the whole thing collapsed. There were rumors Obama used his levers of the government to do it, to compromise the system. But in truth, they weren't ready for the traffic. Anyway, they gave us access. We were able to look. All of Florida was red. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All of Florida was red. And I was like, yeah, this isn't true. Mitt Romney's going to lose, like I said. And he did. Because we were doing something, and that's why we chose to do the 2016 polling the way we did, which the Slimer basically slandered, you know, and libeled, slandered and libeled. The point was to repeat those interviews, that many interviews, to make our point, to drive it home. These people are not changing their minds. There's a very small percentage who truly does change their mind, but they don't really change their mind, right, Laura? Like, they'll say you have to identify them. Are you going to vote for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Are you sure about that? How strongly are you in this district? How strong are you in this? How convinced? I mean, I'm like leaning towards Hillary Clinton. Okay, we'll come back to you. See you in 3 weeks, right? That's what we did. Then they would say, I'm undecided. The truth is that was always a undecided voter, and there are very few of them. And then determining whether they vote, that's the only true swing vote that you have to see. The polls swinging back and forth, gyrating 8 points, 10 points. That's bull. Those are artifacts of the polls themselves. Artifacts being flaws that are created out of the methodology itself. I am right about this. I have been right for years, and I don't know how many more times I got to prove it. These polls don't swing. It is not possible for Nate Cohen to say it's Trump +2 in Florida in 1 month and then Biden +6 in his final poll. Florida did not swing like that. It was swinging very, very small. Trump +1 to Trump +3. Trump +2 to Trump +4. That's it. That's it. Ohio never swung. It was Trump +8 to 10, and that was it. Or 6 at the least, right? And then I had done an episode showing you how badly I had to manipulate the data to get Biden within 4 points. So the point is, the polls were right for the wrong reasons, and the idea of unskewing the polls, it was bogus for the reasons I laid out. But it's important to remember that they do it themselves. They just change the way they change their motivation, and they change the way they phrase it. But it's still a way to unskew the poll. All right.
So this was an interesting question.
I'm the only nerd who can get so passionate over polling.
No, everybody loves.
It's the only thing I care about.
Nerds are great, man. I love nerds. Obviously,
Not the
I
only
married
thing.
you.
I'm so sick of how they're destroying this industry. I'm just sick of it.
Great question. In Minnesota, where would you rally to win? In Maine and New Hampshire, where would you rally?
Yeah.
Can tariffs on textiles help revitalize New England's economy and cement GOP gains up there?
Yeah, so New England, I have argued for a while, is ripe for the Republican taking, and they're, I think, whole mid-Atlantic, area. You could sweep right through it, but if you don't play the game, you can't win. So people say, oh, God, look at New Hampshire. It wasn't close this time. You didn't play for it. You didn't even go after New Hampshire. Why does the governor have, why is the former Republican governor still widely beloved and could crush anybody in a Senate race there? You can't win if you don't play. The Trump campaign essentially abandoned New Hampshire. They did. Maine is a little bit tough because you have the first congressional district. So statewide, it's a little bit tough, but it's not impossible. Look at what Susan Collins did. It's more than not impossible. Mm-hmm. Connecticut can be won. Yep, absolutely. I don't care what the voter file says. Those are ancestral Democrats that haven't changed their voting preference. They'll vote for a state in a very same Senate district. They'll vote for a Republican candidate, but then back Joe Biden. Why? Because they're ancestrally still connected to Democrats, and Republicans have made no effort at the national level to reach these people. Bob Stefanowski probably won the governorship in 2018. I am willing to concede to some of my friends who say that Bob was robbed. I am willing to concede that it's at least possible. Bob very well could have won that because there were voter fraud cases afterwards. It's up in the air, but it was very, very close. I'm just telling you, the way to do that is through Trump's platform. Yeah, that's the last one. We'll call that. I got that. Don't worry. Go handle them. The way to do that is through Trump's platform, because that is what damaged these people. That is what made their quality of life so bad. Okay? And Trump was the only one speaking to them about it. There's also a lot more working whites in some of these states than people really give credit to. And there just simply isn't enough of this professional class, highly educated, or I would say poorly, but highly educated. There's not enough of them. There's just not, to beat it back. You have to appeal to minorities that are in, Hartford, areas like that. You're going to have to peel some of them off, but it is possible. It is. But they don't do it. Minnesota's tough after what I saw last time. Robert was right about that. This is just Scandinavian swing that I think I don't want to hear about voter fraud there. We polled it. Joe Biden won Minnesota. We overestimated Joe Biden, by the way, in Minnesota by a couple of points, like 2 points or 2.5 points, something like that. Within the sampling error, I know that. But we still knew he was going to win it. And Trump did better in the Iron Range, as expected. Every state is a little different. So the question was about Maine and this and that. Every state is different. I can't tell you what to do to win each state in a blanket proposal. With Minnesota, it was very clear. Donald Trump did not do well enough in Olmsted. He did not do well enough outside of the Twin Cities. He got 47% of the vote there 4 years ago. There was really no reason for he didn't visit Minnesota like he visited all these other states. He just didn't. So it's, and then also too, he probably could have done a little bit better in the Iron Range than he even did. He did well, but he didn't do as well as I thought. And the southwestern part of the state. So again, though, similar in that state is that their grievances and their problems are problems that would be solved by the America First agenda. But you just have to really focus on that heavily, and you got to deliver for them. And anything Trump delivered, it's like he didn't really go back and remind them. He delivered. They spent money there, but that was it. That's just not good enough. It's not good enough to spend money. You got to win people by winning them. All right, so with that, I hear the cue. We're going to rock out of here. Listen, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, all right, to YouTube, and then hit the notification bell. Also, Facebook users, I didn't even know there was that many. We don't push Facebook. Like the page, People's Pundit Daily. We're going through after every single one. There are all these likes and smiles and hearts, and we'll click on them, and there are all these people that it offers to invite. Like the page. If you like the video, like the page. All right, and then follow on gitmo.life @People's Pundit, and on Twitter @Peoples_Pundit. All right. Laura and I are doing something tomorrow. So, I guess everyone can view it. It's really for locals, but I guess the way we're doing it, everyone can kind of view it. We are going to go over some of the questionnaire stuff, so that would be cool. You may want to see that. I have the Don Smith show interview at 12, so we'll do what we did last time on Saturday. We'll wait for Don to be done, all right, and then we'll pop up at 2. Don's got a great show. I pop on at 12:30. We do our weekly recap, but I don't want to go on in the middle of his show, so I'm gonna respect his time slot, and we'll do it at 2, all right, because we are going to do this. I like this idea of doing a monthly approval poll, but much, 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 much more than an approval poll. And then over time, we are the only ones who really got granular. Everybody else was mediocre, not only wrong, but mediocre. We were really granular in our data. And we got to keep that up because it was illuminating. I'm talking about ancestry, national origin, all right? And also, we're going to ask these questions in a way that is more relevant than the way that we see in most media polls. So, for instance, do you support giving people who are here illegally a path to citizenship? Is that really the question? Or is it, do you support people who are here illegally, 11 million, to have a pathway to citizenship when 10 million Americans are out of work? Isn't that really the correct way to ask that question? Right? And then we'll go over some of that tomorrow. I really like this idea because the polling data is important. You know how many Republicans in the House out of the 10 who voted to convict Donald Trump? You know how many idiots were really looking at media polling data still? I bet every single one of them had their staff bring them a poll showing them 20-something% favor conviction. That's a load of crap. We saw that with the Ukraine impeachment too. Then why didn't 20-something% vote for Joe Biden? It's just wrong. Because they're just wrong. All right. And also, well, we'll do that tomorrow. I just wanted to, I got, somebody took a snipe at me again. They were wrong about the polling record, number one. All right. And number two, they left out a couple states. And number three, they forgot a little something called the sampling error. All right. So we'll do this more tomorrow in depth, but I will leave you with this. A Trump +1 in Arizona, okay, is more accurate than a Biden +3 or 4. All right, maybe for people who don't understand the industry and statistics, okay, it is more accurate when you are closer to the actual result than it is to just predict the winner. So a Biden +17 in Wisconsin is not as accurate as a Trump +1 in Wisconsin. Even though Trump lost Wisconsin officially. Maybe this is a little bit hard for some people to wrap around their heads. But if you criticize pollsters for a living, then maybe you should get it. Maybe you should understand it. So I'll have my pollster bullseye shirt on tomorrow and we'll get into it. All right. So with that, I'm going to go, and everyone have a safe and happy weekend. As always, thank you for the support, for watching the show, as always, and for sharing. All of you just, maybe share the show. That's what builds an audience, and we couldn't do it without you. Very much appreciate it. All right, so everybody, again, be safe. Have a very happy Friday, and we will see you tomorrow. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun? I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear overnight, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you own me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told